Trade Genius.
What's going on, guys? Philip at Trade Genius. All right, we're going to take a look at Bitcoin. Now, today's Friday, a lot of crazy news coming out. Trump basically called out Jerome Powell, said who's the bigger enemy, President Xi of China or Powell. He deleted that tweet. Then he followed up with another tweet that said that basically ordering American companies to decouple from China. So a lot of risk-off activity, and risk-off means Bitcoin goes up. So we're going to talk about, now that we kind of framed this environment, let's look at the charts that we normally go through and see where we're going. So this is our daily chart, and we've been consolidating. As you have seen in past videos, we talked about consolidation. And I'm going to show you a fractal that we're in where basically it plays into this, what we've been expecting as we come up out of the bear market, right? And then we consolidate. So that's currently what we're doing. Again, any upside move, I think, is going to be capped by this trend line for the time being. And, the downside, we'll see on this trend line being supported or not. From what I see, we could very well test the low 9 still, and that wouldn't really change anything. But I do think that range is possibly in play. Now, Bitcoin will react in the interim to these kind of macroeconomic issues. It is, obviously has slid into that profile of safe haven. And so we're going to see it react whenever we have these types of days where there's a lot of risk-off type news hitting. So, bigger picture, this is what we're looking at, more of a consolidation. I will say on the weekly, normally on the weekly, we get these smaller moving averages or a faster moving average, I should say, and we're holding that. Typically in these parts of the cycles, guys, this moving average will buoy price. So we may gyrate around this, make some lows below it, but generally speaking, the faster moving average on the weekly at this point in the cycle is going to more or less be kind of an anchor point for price, especially when we start getting into more choppy environment, which I think is going to happen into October, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. The other thing too to keep an eye on, guys, is the Bitcoin dominance. If you look here, the stochastic RSI, when they cross, we get a nice bump in the Bitcoin dominance, and whenever we get a bump in Bitcoin dominance, we see that reflected in price as well. So we had a cross on the July 8th. We also had a cross around July 29th, and we're about ready to get into another cross here. So any shorts, to the downside, I think have maybe 24 to 48 hours to happen, and then we should be looking for some indications that this thing's going to make another run up. And if it does make that other run up, then I think we're going to see the top of that trend line. So if we look here, guys, we talked about, so July, the end of July, right? That last cross, that happened here right around this moneymaker buy, which if you guys are interested in this or joining us in the room, we had a really good week. Head over to tradelikeagenius.com and you can get that there. But going back to that previous one in July around the 6th or 7th, again, a nice little pop up there when we saw that dominance cross. All right, so those are decent indications too. And you don't want to be swinging into alts when we get into this situation, right? Because here alts dropped. That's what this orange line is. Here alts dropped. So we could see another one here. I think this would be the final, guys, move down for alts, because I think what's going to happen is we're going to chop for a bit. So I think after this cross and this bump up into dominance, and we get another one of these moves here where this is going to come up, I think this spot here is going to be a great time to swing long on alts. Okay. All right, guys, here's a regression chart. This is on a logarithmic scale, but basically a nice way of charting the trajectory of Bitcoin, right? Obviously, the bottom of this is the best time to buy, but really anything below blue, as far as buying it and adding to your stash, your portfolio is ideal, is optimal. Bitcoin tends to, once it gets above it, especially coming out of these bear markets, tends to stay above it and then move up from there. So I think largely this level, and we'll look at the fib multiplier as well. I think largely this level is going to be key going forward, building a base off of this, and then start moving up as we get closer to that halving. Here's the fib multiplier like we talked about. Again, this, I think the blue line kind of becomes the blue line and the yellow line becomes the range for this cycle. And as we break yellow, and we may tag yellow a few times, that's historically what's happened. But as we break yellow, that's going to be a key indication. We should see a fairly quick move to the Fib3 level, currently at about 18,876. Could probably see it up to 19 if we start consolidating with an up bias and that grows. All right, another chart I wanted to show you guys was the GBTC premium. Now I've shown you those charts, but this is a way to kind of graph it on the Bitcoin chart. And 25 is an interesting level for the premium, so that's 25%, because if you notice, when we're in a bear market, it kind of hits its head on that level, right? Then once we come out of the bear market, what do? We bounce up above that level. So anytime, if you guys are looking at getting GBTC and you're looking for spots to get it, the 25% area on the bull move is historically the best price to get it. Now, again, that's a lot of premium, but if you're in a 401k or a self-directed IRA, this is really the only way to get exposure to Bitcoin moves using the GBTC Bitcoin Trust from Grayscale. So keep an eye on this. This thing dips back to 25%. Not only is that a decent spot usually for price as far as buying dips, it's also your cheapest opportunity to buy shares of GBTC. So I think this 25% level will probably maintain, and the next dip down to it I think would be a solid buy as well. On the top side, when you start getting near 40, that starts getting pretty toppy for the Bitcoin premium, and you really don't want to be buying up there, because what happens is if you buy that 40% premium, price may drop, and usually does when premium gets up there, because this is kind of like a retail gauge, right? If they're wanting to buy, FOMOing in, they're going to drive premium up, and if they're fearful, then premium will drop. But if they're buying up in these levels, you're not doing yourself any favors, because price is going to pull back and premium is going to pull back, and you won't see the premium percentage drop as you would if you were buying at these levels. So if you buy at these levels, price not only goes up, but premium goes up, and it amplifies the percentage gain if you're swing trading GBTC. So again, I think this is going to consolidate with price, obviously, GBTC, but watch for those 25% premiums. I think that's a key level in this market. Okay, here is the meme on the current move, or more of a fractal. So basically what I was looking for is where we had this move, this bottom move out of the bear market, similar to what we saw in 2015, and how did it line up? And so basically this is a 4-day chart of the historical last halving cycle bottom and a 2-day chart of the current halving cycle bottom. And as you can see right now, these peaks are lining up, and what it's telling us is that we're going to see some chop. And basically I overlaid this move onto the current chart down here. So we'd see some chop, and then as we get into October, we should see a move pretty sharply up if we're going to maintain this fractal. So kind of your roadmap going forward to keep an eye on this, and we'll update this as we move forward. But so far, we're starting to see where we're consolidating, and that's playing right into this. If we were to follow this pretty exact, then what we would see is the beginning of September, a slow move out of that pennant, and then a grind higher. So that's kind of like what I'd be looking for. So we're going to consolidate for next couple of weeks, and then see a slow grind higher. The difference in this cycle is obviously we've got some macro news that's a lot different than what was going on here. So that obviously could impact what goes on. The only way I think this really breaks away materially is if the markets really just implode. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Fed's going to step in and do whatever it takes to keep something like 2008 happening again. Otherwise, the end the Fed move is going to probably explode, and they don't want that to happen. They want to stay in control. So more rate cuts, but again, all of that's very bullish. And this entire global cycle of negative interest rates, it's a slippery slope. They're not going to escape it, and that's ultimately probably what's going to fuel this Bitcoin parabolic growth. Looking at internals, what we have is a situation where we have positive funding rate, meaning the pro guys are more bullish, but we have a negative premium rate. Typically, when you see this sustained, we get stuck in a range, and that's kind of what we did here while we're in this range. Now, risk off news has hit today, Friday, and so we've spiked up. So it'll be interesting to see. We already see the premium index starting to shrink, and if that goes bullish, then that's probably going to erase the range type behavior to be expected when we see this. So one thing I do want to keep an eye on is, again, when the premium funding or premium index is negative at these funding periods, which are the end of these bars here, you'll see weakness after those. And so I don't see that happening here because the premium index is shrinking toward the upside off of the activity this morning. But keep that in mind if you see the premium index. Again, this is the BitMEX Funding and Premium Index. You can get that indicator on TradingView. All right, guys, here's the Bitcoin heat map. We're currently flip-flopping between bearish and bullish on that. Again, if it's red, you want to sell the rips. If it's blue, you want to buy the dips. But you also have to recognize we're getting into this consolidation period, so the colors are going to flip-flop a bit. So basically what we want to do is look at the consolidation, and whichever way that consolidation breaks out, heat map will confirm, and then you would do, whatever it tells you to do, buy the dips or sell the rips. The other thing is the delta. If this does break down, delta hits 0, that's going to be a great opportunity to buy a bounce. So again, not the heat map until we get out of this consolidation is just going to probably flip-flop around. All right, guys. Last but not least, the Chinese yuan line. Again, it's still, Bitcoin and the yuan are still moving together. And right now, with today's news, obviously it's shooting up and Bitcoin's following. So this hasn't decoupled yet. So that still tells me that the Chinese are hedging into Bitcoin, and they're a powerful force when they are looking at Bitcoin as a safe haven. So just keep that in mind. Keep tabs on the yuan and the devaluing and the trade war stuff, because that is playing a part in these moves on a larger scale. All right, guys. So that's going to do it. Again, I think at some point, ultimately, we're going to tag the top of this trend line, currently at about 11,300. But there is, we'll see what happens. Obviously, we had a decent move because of the news today. But I think unless we see 10,600 print, I think that there's going to be a fair amount of resistance in here, guys. And so I'm going to say under 10,600, be wary of a rollover. But I think that ultimately in the next 2 to 3 days, I think we're going to see Bitcoin level off here and then probably push back toward this upper trend line. That's my read based on the technicals and the way dominance is setting up. But larger picture, I'm not expecting any type of breakout beyond this for a while, until not at least until we get into September, and more closer toward the end of or beginning of October. All right, guys. Well, that's it for this edition. Please hit like and subscribe. Really helps our channel. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.
Trade Genius.